We're going to go over some simple ink techniques. First off is some that you recognize. I'm taking a standard ballpoint pen, hatching. You all know, just like with charcoal and any others, it all goes in the same direction. Now this pen needs a little bit of work with it. You can also grab other pens. I don't mind whatever color you use. Just remember, and the more you layer, the darker it gets. Cross hatching, just like before. This is more common in pen work. Paper's not exactly flat, but the more you layer, the darker you get. Remember, sometimes hatching and cross hatching are used in tandem with each other. Scumbling, if you remember, was like scribbles, circles, and the more you layer, the darker it gets. Stippling is one that I know y'all all dread. You can take like a Sharpie if you want like bigger items to stipple. The closer they are, the more darker it gets. Now, I'm expecting y'all to do some stippling manually. Try not to like move up where you make like lines like that. And I'm doing it gently, if you notice. I'm not like slamming my hand against the table. I'm just gently tapping my pen. Now, some of y'all have seen me play with this. This is a stippling pen. I can get it to turn on. And it basically works like a tattoo gun where it goes back and forth. I expect y'all to work manually instead of using the stippling pen. And sometimes it even works better the slower I go. You have to hold this a very certain way or else it does not like work, because if I do like too vertical it starts to bounce. I'm gonna turn that off. But stippling, I expect y'all to kind of, unless you're doing like super large areas and I know you're gonna treat my stuff right, then I won't manually make you stipple it. But side shading, basically with these ballpoint pens, it's really hard to sometimes with these. These are best done with like big pens. Let's see. But you can get a really cool texture by practically laying the ball on its side. And it's super light, if you hadn't noticed. It's like hatching, but not quite. And so you're laying your pen down where it's practically on its side, just enough that the ball can kind of touch the paper, and you just kind of roll it back and forth. Now, ink wash is something a little bit new for y'all. This is where we're starting to get into the wet area. So this is India ink. It is waterproof when dry, but it's while you're soluble while it is wet. You typically will squeeze the top to bring some in. Then you're gonna have some water. I'm gonna move that. Drop some in. You only want a couple. You don't want it too dark. The more water you have, the lighter this will be. Ink, when it's fully concentrated, because this is full concentration right here, is really dark. That's why some watercolor people will actually use that instead, ink instead of watercolor if they want something really dark. But typically, watering it down will get you that nice ink gradient. I typically, whenever I work in ink projects, this is how I would shade it. Is just make a general wash. This is a gradient still, but because I'm going from dark to light. And then if I wanted more ink, I can let it dry, add more, and go from there. Now, white over wash. Grab a pen. There's a very limited number of these, but I have white gel pens that you can draw over top of dried ink. I did this earlier to make this dry. And you can just keep going. Using white ink or white paint is like a super versatile way to add a lot of contrast and interest to your drawings. I can do dots. I could also, over here, do like my other techniques, like so I can do some hatching. It's almost like cross contour hatching, where I can just for effect. I can also scumble if I wanted to. Just for like a negative of it. Stippling, of course. The biggest thing here is have a background down before you start with the white. That way it all comes out. You can technically use like white color pencil or white crayon over it and make more effects, but that's that basic there. Splatter is one I know y'all love. It's not one of my favorites because it's very, very messy. But I do not want y'all like slinging it everywhere. So I'm going to take just a little bit of ink on my brush. And then I'm going to take another brush right here. And see how it gets everywhere? You have to block off areas. But this concentrates it to one small area instead of, you know, going everywhere if you're slinging it. So now dry brush. With dry brush, you're going to want to find a ratty brush. You want to find something that's either super frayed and jacked up or like, you know, has stiff pieces, hog hair bristles, and how dry brush works is you're gonna take like a little bit. I'm gonna just squeeze some on here. And then you're just gonna very lightly scratch the surface. A lot of people do this for fur or hair. It gives kind of a fluffy, cloud-like texture. I can technically dip my brush in here. I just don't want to dip too much of it. Got to be very careful. So that's dry brush. Wet on wet is very similar to how we did, it's going to be very similar to how we do watercolor. I'm going to use some of the dirty water anyways, but I'm going to spread this out, and you want this wet, almost like a puddle, and then you drop some ink into it. And you can see like the ink naturally like spread and feather out. You can also kind of move it if it's got, but that'll create that effect. In alcohol drops, you're gonna want quite a bit of ink. This is also a watercolor technique. Sometimes this is where a lot of stuff will start to cross over between watercolor and ink, but you want a lot of ink for this, or a lot of water. You want to work fast so it doesn't dry, because this dries really fast. So I'm going to squirt some of that over that, and I'm going to take rubbing alcohol, just plain old rubbing alcohol, and I'm gonna like, well, it's trying to. I could see it try it. If it's done right, it makes like an acid wash effect. But it just doesn't want to do it for me today. So, hang on. Maybe I had too much water. Hang on, let's spread some of that out. It'd probably also work better if I'm on the right paper. Well, I swear this works. I've watched it work. Might be the type of ink I'm using, might be a lot of other things. Could be because I just added water to it too. So, but, well, if we can get that figured out, we can get that figured out. But those are our basic ink drawing techniques that we can use for our next project.